In today's episode of Beyond Family Scapegoating Abuse, I'll be talking about why attempting to set appropriate boundaries with dysfunctional or narcissistic family members may backfire on you and only make the scapegoating worse. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Rebecca Mandeville, licensed psychotherapist and certified clinical trauma professional, and I'm also a family systems and family scapegoating abuse expert. I've also written a book for adult survivors of family scapegoating abuse, Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed, and you may want to check that out if you're struggling to understand what's happened to you in your family. I'd like to give a quick update before I begin to all my subscribers who've been asking me about channel memberships. I have added 3 more tiers you can check out by clicking on the white join button. And as of this week, I've added a new perk for all channel members, no matter what level you're at. And that is I'm posting one of my original FSA recovery affirmations every Monday morning to help support your recovery and healing process. So I hope you take a minute to check it out. I've had many of my subscribers and viewers write in to me here on this channel asking me how it is that as they get healthier in therapy or their support forum, whatever they're doing to help heal from the effects of invisible family abuse, psycho-emotional abuse, family scapegoating abuse, narcissistic abuse. And you get to a place where you've decided, some of you have decided, I really want to stay in touch with family. I don't want to go no contact. I don't want to lose connections with family members that I do want to have relationships with. I remember working with a client long ago who was a therapist. She was interning, but was really skilled, and today is a very, very respected therapist in a certain niche that they specialize in. And when they were working with me on healthy communication, taking care of themselves, if they're going to be going to family reunions and such, they did go to one such family reunion. We'd done a lot of practicing and role playing. If someone says this or someone says that, how they could respond in a non reactive way, take care of themselves in the process, not have to exit the family reunion or sit there in a freeze response because of activation of complex trauma symptoms, or suddenly finding themselves in the fight response and fighting back, getting angry, storming out. These are all things that can happen if you are feeling very activated when in a dysfunctional or narcissistic family situation where those insidious, subtle scapegoating dynamics are going on. These invisible processes, possibly the pathological family projective identification process that fuels scapegoating and stokes the fires for the scapegoat narrative. This particular client wanted to feel good when she left that family reunion and thought with the tools she was learning with me that that might be possible. Honestly, I told her I wasn't so sure, but gave her my full support because this was her choice. It's what she wanted to do. And she had the right to make that choice, as you all do, in regard to if you will continue to have contact. I did also tell this client that you can work on healthy communication and boundaries all you want, but if you're walking into a very dysfunctional or narcissistic family environment and other people aren't working on the same thing, the progress in regard to healthier communications, if it's only one-sided, is not likely to bring really good results. But I, again, supported her because this is her wish and she felt strong enough to try this. My client reported later that they realized that in their family, which I saw more as dysfunctional in this case, highly traumatized family with a lot of intergenerational trauma versus narcissistic. My client realized that her role in the family was to be the audience to all the family members. She had been the youngest sibling. The family was very, very eccentric, and that had been her role to sit and watch and admire and listen and be the audience. Now, why might this be? Well, we talk about family roles often here on YouTube land, on channels like mine. Sometimes I admit I'm guilty of simplifying things because I do have new viewers here. And to make things easier for initial understanding, I might talk about the scapegoat child versus the golden child, or how these types of family systems can have split thinking, personality disordered parents, or trauma influencing the family system. I talked about this in my video last week on sibling estrangement and family scapegoating abuse. And by the way, thank you for all your comments. That video got over 40,000 views in 5 days, I think. So those of you who shared it, thank you so much. Human beings are complex and roles are not static. And the scapegoat child might be the golden child the next week or next year. But in a narcissistic family system, roles can be more static. It's always a good idea with my videos to look at the video description to see if I'm focusing on dysfunctional or narcissistic family scapegoating abuse, because the processes are a little bit different and many families can be both. My client began to realize that her role had been as audience. Her role had also been as scapegoat. Once she became familiar with that, in part through my work and my book, Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed. And dysfunctional families, including narcissistic families, are very rigid in their construction. And they have their own kind of homeostasis, which I mentioned in my last video on FSA and sibling estrangement. These families are closed systems, difficult for them to accept new information in the family or even new behaviors, new communication styles from family members. This is because it threatens the family homeostasis, meaning all systems are seeking to find some kind of balance. We know this in systems theory, not just family systems theory. And in a dysfunctional or narcissistic family system, there's a balance, but it's not a healthy one. And it requires people to be stuck in the roles that have been assigned to them, so to speak. It's not like they had a meeting and assigned roles, but it's how these roles developed over time, perhaps down through the generations in that given family system. So what happens when you have a strongly narcissistic family system or highly traumatized, dysfunctional family system with possibly generations of unaddressed trauma that's been passed down like a toxic recipe that everyone's eating and they don't know why they're feeling so sick? So this family member has learned about healthy boundaries. They've been working with someone like me. They go into this family system that has these rigid roles, that has unspoken rules. I have a video on that, the 10 unspoken rules that supports these types of family systems that scapegoat. This family member, such as my client, walking into such a family system is going to be a threat to the current homeostasis. Even if that client was bringing in information just through their own behavior, they were giving an invitation for healthier expressions, healthier communication. Hey, I'm a human being too. I'd really love it if you'd like to hear a little bit about what's going on in my life. Reciprocity in relationships is important. If there's no reciprocity, it's not really a relationship, is it? Probably not one a healthy person would want to be in anyway. But what we know in the field of family systems, what you're really getting is the unspoken message of change back. We don't like this new you. This feels threatening to our system and how it is in this family. Change back. That pressure on the adult survivor of family scapegoating abuse to change back when they do their best because they want to stay connected to their family for whatever reason, that pressure to change back is phenomenal unless they have what we call in family systems an ally in the family who will support them and come to their aid. They will get creamed. They will possibly experience what's called family mobbing, where many people in the family gang up on that family member trying to have healthy communication and good boundaries. This just simply isn't acknowledged from what I've seen in many of the most popular books on setting boundaries with difficult people and difficult family members. There is rarely mention of this homeostasis that these families have, and that try as you might to instill some health into family relationships, the ones you're choosing to keep, unless they're doing the same kind of work, it could create more abuse, more scapegoating abuse, more narcissistic abuse, invisible abuse, psycho-emotional abuse, a form of abuse little recognized by our society, a form of abuse rarely acknowledged by people writing these books on boundaries. My clients tend to find out when they let me know they really want to stay connected to family members that they many times can't, or they can only stay connected with the healthier family members because of that homeostatic system pressuring them on all kinds of levels, including energetic. And I talked about these energy fields, so to speak, this ground, this family ground in my last video. That scapegoated adult survivor is alone on the battlefield with all guns pointed at them. And you can have the best boundaries in the world and the healthiest communication in the world. But if other people don't have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, the willingness and the ego strength to look at their own behavior and say, oh gosh, I was talking a lot about myself. I didn't even ask them about themselves. Oh, I apologize. Gee, I was going on there. Tell me, what are you up to? This is unlikely to happen. Would we be telling victims of domestic violence and abuse spouse to try to work it out with the spouse that abused them and they really need to? And they really should, and it would be really best for them if they did, because you can't go through life without your spouse, even though they're beating you up. Would we do that? But when it comes to family, that's exactly what we're doing, in part because these forms of invisible systemic abuse, family abuse, are pathetically under-researched. There's not as many systems thinkers out there in the field today, and I'm grateful for the ones that are out there, including here on YouTube. There's not an understanding of these forces, these psychodynamic realities, such as the family projective identification process that's been written on for over half a century. This isn't stuff that I'm just making up, pulling out of my hat. This is legitimate, researched on realities that we know can happen with individuals with the individual projective identification process and with families, the family projective identification process. And I talk about these in my book. You can't write a book on family scapegoating if you don't talk about what lies beneath, what might be going on in the unconscious processes of the family member and that system that wants to preserve the dis-ease, the lack of health, as if the family's life depended upon it. And in some ways, it does. The unhealthy life of the family depends upon it. So when a healthier person walks back in, they are not greeted like the long-lost prodigal child. They're often thrown to the wolves times 10, worse than before they started to get healthy. If there is a book that talks about boundaries specifically, a book on boundaries, it's in the title, and it talks about setting boundaries with family members, and it talks about family systems and homeostasis and why they may not be successful. Please tell me about that book so I can put it on my website in the bookshop I keep there, scapegoatrecovery.com/shop. In fact, any book that you think should be on my bookshop on my website that's available on Amazon, tell me about, because these are great resources for all of you and for clients that come to me. We need to get real about what's happening here. Not everyone can stay connected to their family. We need to talk about this. We need to not set people up who come out of these types of families for more trauma by telling them to go back in there and just have these healthy boundaries and these communication skills. And over time, if they stick at it, it'll get better. It might in some cases. It can happen. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's rare. And I should know because I started researching on this about 15 years ago. And I've had, over the years, thousands of respondents. And I've worked with hundreds of families because I used to run family programs at a world-renowned drug and alcohol treatment center. I was in there with 20 families at once, the multi-headed beast, by myself, 100 people in there trying to manage all those dynamics. I've seen a lot. Let's acknowledge that some adult survivors can't re-enter those systems because the systems are too unhealthy. And what the system cannot understand or control, these types of unhealthy family systems, it will reject and eject, or force the adult survivor into a position where they need to eject themselves so they'll pull the parachute and fly out of the plane. Because health is threatening to the homeostasis. Healthy communication is threatening to the homeostasis. Have you ever gone back into your family system, had all your communication tools, felt you were doing pretty well, and then had a parent or a sibling poke, I call it poke, poke, until you felt yourself regressing emotionally, kind of like you're going backwards. You were maybe 35 and now suddenly you feel 15, and now you're 12. Finally, you're a screaming 3-year-old having a tantrum and you're horrified at what's happening because you're a professional out in the world and you've never behaved this way anywhere else with anyone else. As if that person needed to poke and poke and poke you until you broke. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because they were feeling out of control when you were in control. Because they were feeling threatened by your being more adult, mature, grown up, and a healthier communicator than them. It's intolerable. And they need to break you until you're out of control so they can feel in control again. Those of you who have had that happen, I hope that clears some things up. I don't script my videos. I usually have a subject matter in mind. I'm never quite sure what I'm going to say. I clean it up a bit in the editing process. I might not clean so much up today because there's a few of you out there who may need to hear what I've said, all of it. Tell me about your experiences of setting boundaries. Tell me what happened, those of you who are really sincerely grieved that you're not able to have contact with your family and that you did try to go back with healthier communication. I'd love for people maybe working on their PhDs, maybe they'll get a dissertation idea when they read all your comments. I have had grad schools contact me and wanting to use my work incorporated into their dissertations or their theses. You know, people are paying attention. People notice what's going on here. I have some extraordinary people on this YouTube channel. I'm very fortunate. I learn from so many of you every day. So please let the comments come. Some end up in moderation, and I don't have it set to that. I don't know why that happens, and I'm in touch with YouTube about that. But I do look at everything, and I'll get it out of moderation back onto where it should be. So I hope you got something out of today's video. Thanks again for being here. Thank you for your support. Your support, whether a subscriber or a channel member, gives me courage to be out here talking at this level and sharing my experiences as a clinician specializing in what I named family scapegoating abuse and as an adult survivor myself. See you next time.